I'm about to reveal the telehealth marketing strategy that we use to consistently increase profitable revenue by 20 to 40% for brands like IVRX, Effecti, and Freya. And no, it's not by increasing ad spend. See, the telehealth market is fundamentally changing, but most brands are still approaching it like it's 2022. They're getting outbid by the biggest brands with bigger budgets, all while their LTV to CAC continues to drop. Now, make sure to watch this until the end to see the exact strategy the top players are using to stay profitable as ad costs continue to rise. Let's first take a look at what's actually shifted in the landscape.
So what's happening in 2026, specifically in the telehealth industry, and why paid ads alone won't work anymore? Starting with the number one point here, competition has literally exploded. There's 1.6 thousand telehealth businesses in the US, and the industry is growing at 24% yearly. The market leaders are spending anywhere from $18 to $56 million a month on ads, and you pretty much need at least $30K a month minimum just to compete in the GLP-1 space when it comes to advertising. And the ad costs keep going up all the time. Even still. So the CAC is up 60% over the last 5 years, and CPMs keep rising pretty much 10 to 15% every single year. And the healthcare CAC is now anywhere between $15 to $200+, depending on obviously what's the category, what's the treatment that you're selling. And trust is broken. There's 60% of people, of leads, who question the content authenticity. Influencer style claims have eroded credibility, and education and consistency outperform high all the time right now. So there's so much AI-driven generic content and these kind of influencer scams that people are just not trusting you anymore. And this is even more prominent in the healthcare industry. So the question is, how do you win in a market like this? And what are the winners actually doing? So I'm going to use here, again, Hims as an example. How are they able to afford $900 to $29 CAC, stay profitable? There's a few points, but key is that they're focusing on LTV to CAC ratio. So your lifetime value to your customer acquisition cost ratio. Because ad costs will always continue to rise regardless. They're going to keep going up. There's inflation on them. And to win, you have to solve your LTV. You have to have your customers and your patients be worth more than they are currently worth. Here's an example from some directional metrics from Hims. Let's say their monthly subscription value per customer, per patient is something like $100, depending on the treatment category, but on average retention is really high for them. So it's like 24 months plus. Usually people who come to Hims, they stay on the platform in some of the treatments for more than 2 years. Customer LTV, if we count it from this, would be something like 2.4K plus. The CAC is 929. I think this is from 2024, 2025 metric, but anyways, it's been rising and it's been something like this recently, which means that basically the payback period for CAC is more than 9 months, 9.3 months if we consider that a subscriber is worth $100 a month and you're paying more than $900 to acquire them. The payback period is more than 9 months, and this pretty much also means that their 24-month ROI is 258% if we count it with these values here. But it also means that they're able to go negative on a customer for 9+ months, 9 to 12 months, which is crazy, but they have so high LTV, they have so high retention that they're able to do that, and they're able to pretty much outspend everyone else of their competition. And so how are they actually accomplishing this? There's a couple of key points, but let's start with A-tier retention marketing. It's the infrastructure that 2 to 3x their LTV, and it basically includes their email marketing, their SMS marketing, and their Hims has their own app as well, so the push notifications in the app and this kind of marketing as well. And most telehealth brands haven't set up this infrastructure properly, and that's why they're nowhere near the numbers that Hims and these other industry leaders are doing, and why these industry leaders are constantly able to outperform, outbeat, and just outrun you completely on the competition. And most brands, they haven't spent the time, or they just have the basic e-commerce flows in place, or their email strategy is just like off-the-cuff emails. They're just sending content for the sake of sending content, but they don't have any strategic lead in the content itself. So that's a couple of reasons what are the issues for them. But then the second key issue is that maybe you hired a traditional e-commerce email agency because there's a lot of these around, but they don't understand the telehealth patient journey. They don't understand the unique funnel of telehealth. They don't understand what it means to sell prescription medication or healthcare products instead of selling some apparel or something like that. And they use e-commerce strategies that destroy trust and just don't work, don't convert, because they're not speaking to the actual customer, the actual patient of your telehealth brand. So if you're a telehealth brand, what's the strategy you need to implement? You need at least these flows. So these are the core 5 automations that bring revenue free on autopilot for you. So they keep bringing you revenue 24/7 when you sleep, when you have set these up, and they will keep compounding the more revenue you're bringing, the more traffic you're bringing to these flows. The key 5 flows are pretty much welcome flow, who is abandonment flow, post-purchase flow, cross-sell flow, and win-back flow. And obviously, when it comes to welcome flow, you also need the pop-ups that are pushing people to the welcome flow itself. And I'm going to be going into these leads right now, but before, if you're a telehealth brand and you're doing above 50k per month in revenue and you want us to do the heavy lifting for you when it comes to setting up your retention marketing, your lifecycle marketing, just click the first link in the description of this video to book your free retention marketing audit, and we will map your situation. We will see if we are fit to work together, and if we are, we will make a deal and we will continue working. Anyways, going into the first step here, pop-up plus welcome flow. And this is a top of funnel nurturing flow for lower intent leads who didn't start the health intake. This starts when these people have signed up to the pop-up, and it's pretty much starting immediately after the sign up. So the pop-up here is, for example, it's collecting data from them. What's your top health goal right now? Lose weight or boost vitality. And then it's offering you chance to give your email address so you can join the next dietitian call with Freya's dietitian. So this flow usually starts when people come in from the pop-up, and the flow's purpose is to introduce the brand and expertise clearly, give away the pop-up incentive if you have one. So for example, in Freya's case here, we are giving them the access to the Zoom call with the dietitian. Then the goal is to provide education first, but not hard sell, because these leads are typically higher, lower intent leads, because these are the leads that didn't complete your health questionnaire yet, but we were able to catch them with the pop-up, so they are not that high intent yet. So you need to start with the top of funnel content and provide education instead of going hard into selling mode straight away. You want to include a CTA to get your personalized plan, and then you want to personalize the flow based on their key goal. So in this case, there would be a separate flow for losing weight and a separate flow for boosting vitality, pushing the different products. For example, in the losing weight context, they're pushing to the GLP-1s, and then for the longevity vitality context, they're pushing to relevant products on that side. Now, flow number 2 of the key flows is questionnaire abandonment, and this triggers when patient doesn't finish the questionnaire, the health intake. The goal here is to send reminders emphasizing the value and addressing objections, linking back to the pre-filled questionnaire with a magic link. So basically this means that you link with a dynamic magic link that puts them back to the exact same spot in the questionnaire where they left off from, so they don't need to go through the whole questionnaire again. That would cause a lot of drop-off, but when you can get them back to the exact spot where they left off from, there's less friction and they will continue more likely to actually fill the questionnaire and convert. You want to include educational content or social proof, and then optionally you want to offer small incentives. This is not mandatory to complete the step. So in telehealth, sometimes we don't offer any incentives monetarily, but sometimes in the last emails of the flow, we have some kind of carrot for them, like, hey, here's a financial incentive for you to start your first month of treatment with this discount or something. This flow is usually a little bit longer. I have made a specific video on this flow on my channel, so you can watch it from there. But in this example here, we have an FAQ email, which is just a plain text email that usually works pretty well. So this is like, hey, customer first name. It's, whoever from brand name. I'm reaching out regarding the questionnaire you were filling earlier. If you've already completed your questionnaire, started your treatment, thank you. And then there's basically linking back to their link as an embed. So linking back to the questionnaire to the magic link that I mentioned here. And then there's a lot of these questions. So how does the process work? What is the most affordable way to pay for the treatment? So going through all these FAQs and then ending with a signature from the brand founder or whoever you want to talk about, like customer success manager or somebody, and then another CTA to the unique checkout recovery link or questionnaire abandonment link. Flow number 3 is post-purchase onboarding flow, and this triggers after the first order has been completed. And the key of this flow here is to set expectations and educate how to get the best results from the treatment. We want to include tips, guides, FAQs, and appointment reminders. We want to highlight patient success stories and other social proof as inspiration that, hey, this is what you can achieve, being empowering with that content. We want to include milestone checkups and incentives in the key drop-off points. So if we see that, for example, on month 2, there's a big drop-off, we want to ensure that we have some kind of milestone checkups and incentives there to make sure that these people, we can incentivize them to stay over that drop-off and increase the retention. This is pretty much the longest and most important flow for retention for telehealth brands, because, onboarding is the best retention. When those people come in, they have a lot of doubts, they have a lot of objections. You need to, set up the expectations, you need to handle those objections straight away, or otherwise those people are going to be really likely to drop off after the first month, and you're going to be nowhere near being able to afford to pay for those higher CACs, as, for example, I showed HIMSS as an example. Sometimes this flow, we do this go on for months, like, let's say 4 months. Usually we do it for like 120 days, with regulated automated customer support check-ins, offering proactive help for the patient to keep them satisfied, and then those milestone checkups and other flows, other touch points there. So here's an example from Effecti. Let's set you up for success. There's basically expert tips about, how can you keep track of your goals and reach your goals. And then there's even downloadable time tracking charts and weight tracking charts to provide extra value for these people. And there's also like a tasty recipe, GLP-1 friendly recipe that you can try. So this kind of education empowerment is usually a good example of what this flow can include. Number 4 is upsell and cross-sell flows. These trigger based on the time active on the treatment or based on predictive analytics, like when is this person most likely to purchase another time. The goal of this flow is to recommend complementary treatments for the current treatment, or to upsell into longer term plans of the same treatment. So for example, from monthly plan to 3-month plans, to lock them in for longer. You can also include personalized reasoning. So for example, this is something that makes this flow more value driven instead of just being like pushy and salesy, which is usually not good in healthcare. You don't want to just push push people to buy different medication, but you actually need to have a reason for them that would healthier by taking that medication. So here's an example. At this point in treatment, it's normal to notice changes in whatever, let's say in this case appetite. Here's how some patients support this phase and when it makes sense to consider additional options. And then it links to an educational guide, for example, that later introduces the complementary treatment as context, but it's not going to be the main CTA to like directly push them to the actual treatment. Here's a couple of examples. So for example, from GLP-1s, you can upsell or cross-sell to NAD to increase, vitality, increase energy levels, or, MIG-B12 is another one that you can upsell to. And then there's another example for GLP-1. You can, for example, upsell from monthly plans to multi-month plans to lock them in for longer. And here's an example email just from Ivy. I think this is actually a campaign newsletter email we sent, but it's just an example of like NAD, how you can position NAD as explaining what it does, kind of showcasing the product, its values and everything like that. All right. And then flow number 5 here of the key flows is cancellation/win-back flow. And this flow can also be built for churn risk segment. So basically churn risk segment can be containing people who, for example, pause their subscription, since that is an early churn signal, or if they skip a month into treatment or something. You can build a similar kind of re-engagement flow for those people to kind of catch them before they actually churn fully. Anyways, this flow is usually triggering when a subscription or treatment is cancelled. The purpose here is to send educational content, reminders of benefits, or re-engagement offers. You want to personalize it based on the cancellation reason and the treatment they were active on previously. And this flow usually has 2 different parts. So we have immediate cancel recovery flow, which is like whenever they cancel, you have an instant touch point going back for them, like personalized based on their reason. So if they cancel because of price, you can offer like some price discount for the next month. If they cancel because they didn't reach results, you're talking about that side. Then there's another part of this flow, which is delayed win-back flow later down the line. So basically, let's say 60 days after they churned, you will touch back, send another checkup for them, like, hey, how are you doing? Kind of reinforcing the value proposition, reminding them that we exist. And then if it's a better time for them at that point, then we can kind of salvage those people, get them back to their treatment and reduce the churn and increase the LTV there. Here's an example of one of the emails that this flow can contain. So here's for specific cancellation reason, didn't benefit from the medication. So subject line, not seeing results yet, read this. And then going into basically, if the scale hasn't moved the way you hoped, it's frustrating. Here's what we want you to know. Many patients don't see the full weight loss. And then basically here's what we can do next if you want. So not being like pushy, but just trying to explain like why it might have not worked and what can we do to make it work for you. And then we're saying reply to this email to have your team assess your plan. If you decide stopping is still right for you, we respect that fully. So, really soft communication here to make it feel more personal, make it feel more supportive, not pushy, not salesy. This is really important in the healthcare industry, as I explained. We just don't want you walking away thinking it didn't work when the fix might be simple. And then, brand care team is the signature. Can even be a specific person from brand care team if you want to be more personal with the email here. So just 5 flows, ? Why would we not have any other flows? Is it that simple to actually, succeed with this setup? I want to point out that all these flows need to be custom built for every single treatment you offer. We have brands who are offering like hundreds or like tens of different treatments at least, like 5 to 10 different categories, and each category has a couple of treatments. You pretty much need to build a custom flow for each of these. So let's say you have 10 emails in a questionnaire abandonment flow. You want to build that for GLPs, you want to build that for NAD, you want to build that for Morelin, you want to build it for all of the products you're offering, and in total it will end up being like 50 emails already for 5 different treatments. And then replicating that across post-purchase flows, you usually have like 20 plus emails for all the treatments, replicating that for welcome flows, replicating that for all the other flows. It's gonna have a lot of complexity in the system. So these are the 5 key flows, but it's gonna still end up being a really complex but segmented but streamlined system that has these key touch points but just optimized for every single treatment. One generic ecom flow is just not gonna cut it here because the treatments are so different from one another. And obviously also most brands just build these out once, but they never optimize them, which means that they're basically basing their whole retention strategy on guesses. So for example, if you build your post-purchase flow but you don't look at how it performs, you are just guessing that, hey, maybe at this point these people will need this, maybe at this point they will need this. But if you don't actually on a monthly basis look at your retention cohort charts, see when charts and then see when people are actually dropping off, and then time your emails ideally, add some emails to the points where you're seeing higher drop off, you're not gonna get the results. You're just basing it on guesses. Maybe if you're lucky you're getting decent results. Maybe if you are not that lucky, you're just like guessing. Basically the whole strategy is based on guesses, and the results are also going to reflect that. And for most of the telehealth brands we work with, just optimizing and building building these flows will end up in them having 100 plus emails, 20 plus SMS in the whole automation setup. And we also keep optimizing the key flows monthly as we gather more data. So important flows like questionnaire abandonment flow, we keep running tests and optimizing those flows to improve them further. And then the last part here, broadcast campaigns, which are here to keep your customers engaged and your brand top of mind with frequent communication targeted to different segments of your audience. And first I'm going to show you the key content pillars that we usually divide our campaigns across. So there's basically 8 different content pillars. There's belief shifting, problem agitation, solution framework emails. So these longer form emails for like prospects who are still more top of funnel, they don't understand that much yet, they need to be educated more. We have these longer emails, there's the weight wasn't your fault, there's before after images, then there's explanation of biology over willpower, why Freya's approach is medical, not motivational, and then a long email with more social proof at the bottom. This is more copywriting, direct response copywriting type of email. Then for more aware audience, more high intent audience, there's HIMS email, for example here. It's called simple email. It's basically just like the hero section. It has some data here, so how the results add up. Customers with compounded GLP-1s, here's some data of them. Customers with oral medication kits, here's some data of them. And then just like a simple CTA. So the whole email is something like this. And especially for brands like HIMS, people know the brand really well. People are usually high intent when they land there already. So you don't need that much of this long form content. You just need to stay top of mind with these clean, simple emails. And that's what HIMS is doing really well. But these type of emails don't cut it when your audience is not really aware of the treatment or what it does yet. So in that case, you need these type of emails. There's other content pillars like engagement, such as interactive emails. Another example from HIMS, pushing their free calorie deficit calculator. Then there's educational emails, science behind the spray, and then really like simple, not long email, but explaining exactly what the spray is made out of and what do those ingredients mean and what do they achieve. So there's minoxidil, finasteride, and then that kind of stuff. Then there's social proof emails. So here's a customer success story example. Annette lost 38 pounds, yet she felt disappointed. And then, going through the email, going through the story. And then there's a final, CTA to see the video where she explains her story. Then treatment showcases. These are usually good to make a little bit more like seasonal. So for example, this could have been just a basic random showcase of NAD or glutathione, but we actually made it aligned with the season, which was winter. So, cold seasons here, yourselves know it, supporting with this kind of relevant visual image. And then meet your winter defenders, NAD injections, glutathione, explaining their benefits, and then a dual CTA to either direct to the questionnaire, or then if you are less high intent lead, you might want to learn more, then you're pushing and going to the landing page. Then there's promotional emails. So there's an example here, a plain text promotional email we've sent for one of our clients. Account credit added to your account. We've just added 17.15 store credit and your Labor Day wellness boost ends tonight. Whatever. Then there's CTAs explaining what the treatments are that we offer here, and then signing off as the IVRX team. And then there's another data point, another content pillar, which is basically data collection. So here's an example from Effecti. This is sent to prospects who haven't bought from you yet. So what's holding you back right now? Hey, first name, we noticed you haven't started treatment yet, and that's totally okay. So again, being supportive, not being pushy, but being really like trying to help them, going from that angle. Just reply to this email with a letter. Why haven't they started yet? I feel overwhelmed, not sure if this is the right fit for me. I'm worried it won't work. I want to do it, but it doesn't feel like the right time. It's out of my budget right now. And then we're pushing them to reply to this email. So they press here, they're instantly in the reply section. They can literally just type A, and then after that, it's going to be redirected to the support team. Support team can start chatting with them, already knowing what is the key issue that they've had. And then based on that, we're going to be able to understand more why people are not starting with us, so we can improve our funnel. And then at the same time, we can have the conversations, the support team can have the conversations with these leads, and then eventually help them with those issues and convince them to become a customer or become a patient. And with these kind of emails, these data collection emails, I wanted to add a note that we suggest these for all stages of the patient journey. So for prospects, we suggest these kind of surveys where we ask them what's holding them back. Then for active patient, we want to have surveys that collect, reviews from them, collect UGC from them. Maybe we do interviews. Maybe we want to understand more why active patients are staying with you and what are they achieving, so we can use that as data to improve our funnel, improve our marketing, and use those as marketing claims as well. And then for churn risk customers, so like lapsed customers, we want to include this kind of churn surveys to understand why are they canceling and what can we do differently there. And then we can also personalize the content to try to re-engage those people and get them back to us. Now, the core segments when it comes to sending these emails. So these were the core pillars, what type of emails, what angles we want to be sending. But then when it comes to the actual core segments, there's going to be a couple of these. So there's engagement segments. So these are the basis. It's basically opened or clicked your emails or your SMS in the past X number of days. These are the core base of your broadcast campaigns. So this is how you can control the reach and also protect your deliverability. So if you have a good deliverability, deliverability, you can try to include people who have engaged with your emails in the last 120 days, 150 days, or even more. But if your deliverability is starting to be looking bad, your open rates are dropping like below 40, then you might want to tighten it up a little bit to like engage 90 days to protect your deliverability and ensure that you're landing in the main inbox. Then there's patient stage segments. So for example, prospects versus active patients versus churn risk versus cancelled patients. And then there are treatment interest-based segments. So for example, those who are interested in weight loss, they come in for the pop-up, they press that their goal is weight loss. Or those who are active on weight loss treatment versus those who are interested in some other category or active on some other category treatment. And then there is demographic segments. So for example, first and zero-party data, you collect your leads, of your leads at different stages of the funnel. So you might collect their age in the health intake, their gender, their location, their state they're based in, and so on. And then you can use all this data as you see fit. So for example, if you're offering menopause treatments, you want to offer them for women around a certain age, so you can utilize this kind of data to achieve that. So basically these are the content pillars, and then obviously for all of these content pillars you can utilize these different segments. So you can have like, let's say belief shifting email for prospects, you can have a simple email for a little bit warmer prospects, you can have like educational emails for your active patients, and so on. So that's how you want to kind of play with the content pillars together with the core segments. And what does a balanced content calendar look like? This is obviously different for every single brand, but it should be adjusted every month based on a few key details. Detail number one, what categories or treatments should be emphasized? This is something you need to discuss internally and then with your marketing team, with whoever is managing your lifecycle marketing. So for example, if GLP-1s are bringing 80% of your sales and traffic, that should also be emphasized in the content calendar, obviously. And then if the other treatment categories should be showcased via own channels, they should showcase a little bit at least. But let's say if you're not running any spend behind some minor categories, you don't have almost anyone buying those treatments yet, you don't want to spend too much effort into sending emails about those, but maybe like one email or two emails a month you want to send about those categories to gauge the interest and gauge the performance of those and see if actually your audience is interested in buying those as well, and if it makes sense to like start putting more effort and marketing spend behind them. Then there's which segments should be prioritized. So for example, let's say 60 to 80% of campaigns should be focused on new patient acquisition. As an example, flows are usually doing the heavy lifting for retention, so the post-purchase flows, the win-back flows, and those kind of stuff. Then 20% of campaigns maybe should be to active patients, which is more about empowerment and education, and then maybe like 1 to 2 monthly campaigns for churn risk or the cancelled lapsed patients. I'm not saying this is set in stone, but this is just an example of how it might be allocated. And obviously, what you also want to include when you are making a balanced content calendar, you want to analyze your past month's data to look at the outliers positively and then the underperformance, what hasn't worked, what has worked, and then you can double down on what has worked and kind of like start cutting off the things that haven't been working. And that's how you actually have a positive feedback loop going on every single month, allows you to improve and increase the content quality all the time instead of just sending content for content's sake. Now, the strategy we went through only works when the entire retention system is working together. If you try to implement these flows one by one and don't see meaningful results, it's usually not the execution. It's the missing integration between list growth, segmentation, lifecycle flows, and broadcast campaigns. In the video on screen right now, I walk through the entire retention system we used to take a telehealth brand from 738,000 to 943,000 in sales in just 15 days. You'll see the exact pop-ups we used to capture intent earlier, how flows and campaigns are sequenced to support each other, and how everything ties back to retention, cash flow, and LTV. It's not just theory or isolated tactics, but the actual full system for you to swipe for yourself. Click the video on screen right now and go through it step by step, and I'll see you in the next one.